Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're peeling back the layers on a pretty complex topic. This idea of a spiritual duty, service to humanity, but within some very private traditions. We're looking at source material from the Druze faith and Freemasonry, not just comparing them side by side, but really trying to pull out some maybe surprising truths about what a truly useful life might mean according to these paths.
That's right. We've gathered quite a bit of material focusing specifically on the Druze eighth principle service to humanity and setting that alongside the Masonic cornerstone ideal of relief.
Right.
And our goal here isn't just, looking at charities. It's about understanding why service becomes this central, almost sacred duty for an initiate in both systems. It's not just ethical, it's core.
Yeah, our sources definitely frame it as a sacred obligation. And more than that, a visible sign of divine unity, what the Druze sources call twatted.
Exactly.
So it's not just what you do, but what that action reveals about, well, the cosmos, really.
It's the spiritual work itself, and we need to be clear about the scope right away. This is an obligation tied directly to where you stand spiritually as an initiate. If you take on the knowledge, you also take on the duty to, well, make the world better.
And it's that quiet aspect, improving the world quietly, that I found really striking. We're kind of hunting for what the sources are calling the world's silent guardian. Let's unpack that.
Okay, so to get the obligation, you first need the why behind it. If we start with the Druze view, service is fundamentally linked to spiritual evolution.
Okay.
Their theology sees all of creation, particularly all souls, as part of this single unified system. It's always either progressing or, well, regressing.
So my own spiritual growth isn't just about me sitting alone and meditating. It's tied to everyone else.
Absolutely. Every single action you take either helps or hinders the collective rise of all souls in that unified system. The sources really emphasize amal sali, righteous deeds.
Amal sali?
Yeah, righteous deeds. Not just optional acts of kindness, but central to your own advancement, like a necessary weight to balance the soul, you could say. And crucially, this has to be universal.
Meaning not just helping your own group or family.
Precisely. The service has to extend to all of humanity. The poor, the sick, the orphan, the stranger. It doesn't matter who they are or what they believe. Because serving them is serving God directly. Why? Because according to Talid, divine unity isn't just for one tribe or religion. All that separation is ultimately an illusion. Serving others helps break down that illusion.
That universal idea connects very strongly with the Masonic ideal of relief. We always hear the three big ones: brotherly love, relief, and truth. And it's easy to just think relief means, giving money. But the sources we looked at show it's much broader, much like that amal sali.
Oh, much broader than just cash. Relief demands alleviating human suffering wherever you find it. That includes moral guidance, emotional support, social upliftment, not just handing over food or money. It's about total support for your fellow human because you see them fundamentally as a fellow traveler.
And some of the ritual language really captures that beautifully. I was struck by that line where the senior warden reminds Masons they are traveling upon the level of time to that undiscovered country.
Yes, that's a powerful image.
It really emphasizes this shared path, this shared responsibility. It implies you can't really finish the journey alone or sort of race ahead of everyone else.
And that's the fundamental connection between these two, isn't it? This universalist ethic. Both traditions push the initiate to see themselves not as, just a member of their group focused only on their own community,
Right.
but as a spiritual citizen of the world. The real commitment is uplifting all of humanity way beyond borders or beliefs, making sure that the light, as they might put it, is applied everywhere.
Okay, so this shared mission, this universal duty, that brings us to what seems like the really interesting part, the paradox. If service is so important, so universal, why the intense shared focus on anonymity, on humility, why discourage public displays of charity so much?
Yes. This gets to the heart of the spiritual practice, doesn't it? In the Druze sources, the teaching is very clear. Public displays almost always feed the ego.
Seeking applause, basically.
Exactly. Seeking recognition, validation, or worse, it can generate a kind of spiritual pride. But the real beneficiary of service, spiritually speaking, is meant to be the giver's soul. And that purification process gets kind of short-circuited by public praise.
So the motivation has to be pure conscience. not looking for a pat on the back.
Precisely. The sources say the best service is anonymous for two key reasons. One, it keeps the giver's motive pure. And two, it honors the recipient. It doesn't shame them, as one source put it. By taking away the spotlight, you protect the dignity of the person receiving help. It makes the exchange truly about human connection, not about social appearances or making the giver look good.
Which is quite different from how a lot of modern charity works, where visibility is often key to fundraising, right? It demands a whole different mindset.
It does.
And that humility, that finds a really strong echo in the Masonic ethic, too. They often quote that biblical idea, "Let not thy left hand know what thy right hand doeth."
Yes, Matthew 6.3. It's a constant reminder. The Mason is told to act from conscience and light, not from vanity. It becomes this internal contract, policed only by your own sense of obligation to truth.
Okay, so this internal contract shapes the ideal person. Tell us about that.
Well, in the Druze tradition, this ideal is the Akhwal, the enlightened one, and the key thing is they're often indistinguishable from anyone else.
Blending in.
Exactly. Walking among people without any special recognition, no title, often deliberately hiding their learning or status. It's their deeds, done quietly and from that pure place, that actually transform the world around them. This commitment to hidden virtue really underlines the idea that it's the intention that shapes the soul, not what other people say about you. A big contrast to the Juhal, the ignorant, who are always chasing that superficial recognition.
That really clarifies the why behind the secrecy. So if the work has to be hidden and you can't seek recognition, how does someone actually do this huge universal job? Which leads us to that concept you mentioned, the world is the lodge.
You've hit it. That's a core operating principle, especially in Masonry. While the formal rituals happen in, specific tiled rooms.
Right, behind closed doors.
The real work, the true labor of the Mason, happens out in the world, in every part of life. The Mason sees himself as a moral builder, constantly working in society, schools, hospitals, government, business, home. Building a symbolic temple, yes, but doing it with ethical action and social contribution, not just stone and wood.
And the Druze parallel here is really interesting, too. They maintain strict secrecy about their core beliefs. They don't try to convert anyone.
Absolutely not.
But they are taught to serve society openly. As doctors, teachers, engineers, public servants, their role in society is meant to be this quiet force for good, lifting everyone up.
And that is the outward expression of Todd. It's the living presence of that divine unity, actively working in a world that often seems broken and fragmented. Every quiet act of service becomes like a support beam. Every person helped is proof that the material world can reflect that deeper spiritual unity.
It sounds like maintaining the required humility must take incredible self-discipline, though. Both traditions seem to warn really strongly against pride, self-righteousness, or spiritual arrogance that could come from doing all these good deeds.
That's the constant danger, isn't it? Pride poisons the whole effort. The Freemason is always reminded that the real obligations are internal. They're enforced by conscience alone. It doesn't matter who's watching, as one of the ritual phrases puts it. What you do in secret, the Grand Architect knows openly. The accountability isn't social, it's internal and, well, cosmic.
That internal focus suggests service isn't just good behavior, it's like structurally necessary for the soul's health.
Yeah.
Let's maybe shift into that more esoteric meaning now, service, as sacred architecture and even alchemy.
Absolutely. This is where it moves beyond simple kindness into something more like, geometry and mysticism. For the Druze, charity is sometimes described as sacred symmetry.
Symmetry, how so?
Well, if the soul gets out of balance because of ego or ignorance, selfless action is the tool of Taliji. It restores that unity. It aligns your inner self with the cosmic order, kind of brings things back into harmony.
Okay, restoring balance. And in Freemasonry, service is viewed almost entirely through that metaphor of building the perfect temple, right?
Completely. The trowel, for instance, a basic builder's tool.
Yeah.
It isn't just for mortar. Symbolically, it's used to spread the cement of brotherly love and affection. The idea is that this binds individual souls, all these separate stones, into one single harmonious structure, the collective spiritual temple of humanity.
So we stop seeing people as separate, competing units.
Exactly. And start seeing them as essential parts of one massive shared construction project. Albert Pike, who wrote extensively on Masonic philosophy, really nailed this. The true Mason works for humankind, not for glory, but because it is right. The rightness is built into the fabric of reality itself.
Okay, so that's the architecture. What about the alchemy? How does the act of giving actually change the giver, like turning lead into gold?
Right. Both traditions really see selfless acts as a kind of alchemical fire. It burns away the impurities in the soul, things like pride, greed, fear, selfishness. It's a refining process. The effort involved in acting selflessly, especially when no one's watching or applauding, it transmutes your inner nature. You could think of it like spiritual weightlifting.
Yeah.
The heavy lifting needed for selfless action, particularly anonymous action, builds spiritual muscle.
So it becomes this powerful cycle. Service comes from some initial enlightenment,
Yeah.
but then the act of service itself deepens that enlightenment.
Precisely. The purity of the motive keeps the cycle going. The Druze might call this spiritual ripening. Freemasonry talks about making one's mark upon the temple, improving that inner structure. It's the final synthesis. Service isn't just a moral thing you do to be good. It's a mystical act that actively shapes your soul and prepares it for greater understanding.
So pulling all this together from the source material, what's the big takeaway for us? It seems both paths really hammer home the truth that spiritual understanding doesn't mean much without action. Wisdom has to become compassion. Light has to move through your hands, through your deeds, not just stay in your head.
Yes. The ultimate role for the initiate, as portrayed in these sources, is really the silent guardian of light. The world might never know their name, might never recognize their specific work. But the sources insist that the soul that gives quietly, works humbly, and loves freely is, quote, inscribed in the eternal scroll and counted among the true builders.
That's a really profound image. It suggests that service isn't some side quest on the way to spiritual growth.
No.
It is the path.
It is the path itself. And this deep dive definitely leaves us, and hopefully leaves you, with a pretty significant question to think about. How can you embody that role of a silent guardian in your own daily life? How can you serve others without needing recognition or reward, knowing that the real accountability, perhaps, is internal and cosmic?